Hello everyone. Today we are explaining types of price elasticity of demand. Here are the first point is infinite or perfectly elastic demand. When a change in price leads to infinite change in quantity demanded, it is known as infinite elastic demand. When demand is elastic, demand curve is horizontal straight line parallel to x-axis, or we can symbolically describe this demand. We can show that by elasticity of demand equals to infinite. The perfectly elastic demand curve, the curve are, here are the x-axis, here is the y-axis, and perfectly elastic demand curve is horizontal to x-axis. So I am explaining the diagram. First of all, we have taken x-axis, which is quantity demanded, and another y-axis, there is a price, and the elasticity of demand of this curve, the elasticity of demand of this curve is perfectly horizontal. So price, and here we can show the quantity. Here are the negligible changes in price, so we have changes in quantity Q2, Q and Q1. So it is the demand curve which is perfectly horizontal to x-axis. So second point is perfectly inelastic demand. Perfectly inelastic demand. Here the changes of price does not matter. The elasticity of demand is parallel to y-axis. Here are the small changes or infinite changes, doesn't matter of price, but demand does not changes. Here the elasticity of demand is horizontal parallel curve to y-axis. So price changes can't change the demand pattern. For example, we consume food items. Food items does not changes the demand. If price increases from P to P1, the demand for food does not decrease. And if price decreases from P to P2, further demand for food doesn't decrease. The perfectly inelastic demand curve is shown by the symbolically is elasticity of demand equals to 0. Here it is. Third aspect is unitary elastic demand. Unitary elastic demand. The demand it changes accordingly the price, and or you can say if price is increased by 50%, the demand is decreased by 50%, and if price is decreased by 50%, the demand is decreased by 50%. So the diagram for this is x-axis shows the quantity demanded, y-axis shows the price, and here the curve is non-linear curve. So if price is increased, the demand is decreased. For example, price is increased by 50%, the demand is also increased by 50%. If price increase from P to P1, quantity demanded is decreased from Q to Q1. It can be shown by symbolically by elasticity of demand equals to 0. Our next point is relatively elastic demand. Relatively elastic demand. Here the best example for relatively inelastic. Here our next topic is relatively elastic demand. So here is the best example for relatively elastic demand is if price falls by 50%, the demand rises by 75%. In the figure we can show that exactly we can know about the relatively elastic demand. Here are the y-axis, here is the x-axis. X-axis shows quantity demanded, y-axis shows the price. So here demand curve is more flatter. So we can say that if price of a commodity X is P and quantity demanded is Q, if price decrease by 50%, the quantity demanded by 75%, Q1, and price will be P1. So it can be shown by symbolically is elasticity of demand is greater than 1. Elasticity of demand is greater than 1. Here our last topic of elasticity of demand is relatively inelastic demand curve. Relatively inelastic demand curve. It is the best example of if price falls by 50%, the demand will rise by 25% only. That is less than percentage change in price. We can show it by the following diagram. Here the diagram for this. Here are the y-axis. Here is the x-axis. X-axis shows quantity demanded. Y-axis shows price. And here is the demand curve is more steeper than the relatively elastic curve. Here price of commodity X is P and quantity demanded is Q. If price falls by 50%, the demand will rise by only 25%. So we can measure or we can check the demand and price of the commodity. Price falls by 50% from P to P1 and quantity increase by only Q to Q1. That is we call that more relatively inelastic demand curve. It can be shown by symbolically elasticity of demand is less than 1. So if you like that video, please subscribe the channel. Thank you.